Hey, and welcome to Thursdays with Charlie. It's the 30th of July, 2020, and this is our lucky 13th show. When we began this, no one ever imagined we'd be going through this lockdown period for so long, but we're continuing and certainly finding plenty of material. I have to tell you, last week we put out a call on the Facebook page of let us know where you're watching the show from. And people responded amazingly to our request. So let me just give an idea. We're not an international celebration that's gone viral yet, but we certainly are achieving some notoriety. There are two foreign countries besides the United States. We're being viewed in Canada and we're being viewed in Germany. So Canada, Germany, and the United States represent the three countries that are viewing our Thursdays with Charlie show. We're being viewed in 14 different states of the United States, including Florida, Minnesota, and Iowa, Michigan, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Utah, Virginia, and South Dakota. You'll notice that many of those states are where our snowbirds come from, so we thank our snowbirds for continuing to watch and giving us those 14 states out there. And some are from friends of ours who have traveled to the states or have relatives in the states and they've told us about us. But we're grateful wherever you're watching us from. We are grateful you're watching us and we enjoy having you with us. And we'll keep adding to that list and hopefully it will continue to grow. I also have to thank you. Our reservation system continues to work and we continue to have room at most of the masses. We have room usually at the 6 p.m. on Saturday and at the 10 a.m. and the 12 noon on Sunday. So even at the last minute, it would be worthwhile taking a ride over, and chances are we could fit you in on those three masses. The 4 p.m. on Saturday and the 8 a.m. on Sunday do tend to fill up first of all. As I mentioned earlier in the week to some of the people, we've had two priests in the Diocese of Las Vegas who have tested positive for the COVID virus, and that has caused two of our parishes up in Las Vegas, Holy Family and Christ the King, to have been shut down for a couple of weeks. Both, I believe, are reopening this weekend, so we're very grateful for that, and we will keep those priests and their people, their fellow parishioners with our fellow parishioners in our prayers. We hope that there's a complete recovery and no resurgence of that. As you might have noticed, we've been doing lots more work on the Garces Center, and I hope that you've been enjoying watching it. I certainly encourage you, if you're in the area, to drive by and see the structure being completed on the outside. It matches so beautifully with our current building. It's a great addition to our campus. And I have to thank all the people who have been so generous in providing donations specifically for the Garces Center. We put out that request. We sent home in one of the mailings some forms to take care of that. And so far we've received just under 100 separate donations for the Garces Center. They have come in, and they've come from all over the country, I might add, and we're very grateful for that. One of them even came as a remembrance of Pascal, our owl, so we're very grateful. They've ranged in amounts from very, very generous to very, very, very generous. Our largest one so far is for $10,000, and we are very, very grateful, and we look forward to more and more coming in. But to have received almost 100, we'll hit 100 probably with today's mail. We're very grateful for the generosity that has been given. One of our parishioners, Bob Bilbrey, has been using his drone to take continuing construction pictures of the Garces Center. We've been getting them almost daily, and we got a particularly beautiful one from yesterday, which I'm very glad to share with you, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. The drone not only shows you some of the beauty of Laughlin as a whole, but also particularly the beauty and the continual growth of our construction project on the Garces Center. Please enjoy.
Oh
15th of August of this year, 2020, will mark our 28th anniversary as a Catholic church here in Laughlin, Nevada. Some of you may recall that we published this hardcover book in 2017 as we celebrated our 25th anniversary as a parish. We happened to discover some boxes of these that we had stored away, and perhaps there are some of our newer members or even some of our older members who would be interested in these. So if you were to stop by the church, and our office is open from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, as well as we're here for the masses over the weekend. Those books are available still until they run out for $5 each. So if you should like to have a hard copy edition with color photos, pictures of several hundred of our parishioners, a lot of our activities, and we'd be very glad to share that with you for a total of $5. And we're planning on donating any of the profits from that to the Garza Center, so you would be helping our new building along very, very well. We have several anniversaries to celebrate, not only our parish on the 15th of August, but on the 1st of August, the local newspaper, the Laughlin Times, will celebrate 30 years. So this Saturday, August the 1st, will be the 30th anniversary for the Laughlin Times. The first edition was published on August the 1st in the year 1990. I have a long history with Laughlin, and some of you, I think, are aware of it. I happened to visit the area in 1991, and I picked up a copy of the newspaper, and I began subscribing to it, and that's how I followed the beginnings of our church here in Laughlin. As many of you know, back in the early 90s, people began to ask the bishop. At that time, the whole state of Nevada was under the Bishop of Reno, Nevada. It was one diocese, and that bishop was Daniel Walsh. And Bishop Walsh was asked by many of the people here in Laughlin, why can't we have a Catholic church here in Laughlin? Their options for going to Mass were either to drive all the way up to Boulder City or Henderson or Las Vegas, or to go south to St. Anne's Parish in Needles, or to go across the river to Arizona to St. Margaret Mary in Bullhead City. Those were about the options that were available. Occasionally there were masses that were said in what eventually became the Museum of the Colorado River, but that was on the Arizona side as well. And Bishop Walsh said he was open to a petition of names of people who wanted to see a Catholic church here in Laughlin. And so around middle of 1990, maybe towards the end of the year, people began gathering signatures, names and addresses of people who wanted a parish, a Catholic church here in Laughlin, Nevada. And they gathered them, sometimes standing outside of the churches in the area, sometimes standing at supermarkets or gathering places, sometimes passing them around neighborhoods. And they managed to gather 500 plus signatures on that petition to have a Catholic church here in Laughlin. They were actually able to complete that in 1991 by the end of the year, early 1992. And the signatures are beautiful. We have that original list, and we were able to look over it and look at those 500 signatures. Many of the names are still recognizable today. Those families are still members of our Catholic community here in Laughlin. But I found the most interesting signature on that entire list of 500 plus names was this one. Mr. and Mrs. Ronald Reagan. And they listed their address as the White House. Now, I don't want to say that Ronald and Nancy Reagan were or were not here in Laughlin and signed our petition or not, or perhaps somebody signed their name for them, but it's kind of nice to look back on our records and say, Oh, maybe President Reagan and his wife were among those who wanted us to be here. We're very grateful for whatever it is, and I don't know that we could ever check it out anymore to make sure, but I like to think it's a nice memory that in some way they actually signed our petition. Now, I decided when I wanted to say some things about our history, I started writing down what I wanted to say, and it became an awful lot. And I said, okay, that's all right. I will do one show and then maybe do part of a second show. And then it became too much for that. And I said, well, I'll do two shows about our history. And now I think I have enough materials for three shows about our history. And since our founding was in August of 1992, I think we'll devote this show and the next two after it to a little bit of parish history of how St. John the Baptist Catholic Church came to be here in Laughlin. I've already mentioned the petitions of 500 plus names that was sent to Bishop Daniel Walsh up in Reno. It was considered, and eventually it was decided that a mission could be established here in Laughlin. Now, it's hard to find written records of this all occurring. Actually, our petition is among the best historical proofs of it happening. We don't have an actual record of the mission being established, but we do have a letter that the first priest who was assigned here, Father John McShane, wrote to a friend of his. And in that letter, Father John McShane mentioned that he was coming to Laughlin on the 15th of August. And so we've regarded the 15th of August as our founding date ever since then. Of course, you realize I like to look back and think that, well, really we can date ourselves back to Father Garces visiting here in 1776. So I think we really began on March 4th, 1776. But that is kind of a stretch of the imagination. So the actual existence of St. John the Baptist has been here since the 15th of August, 1992. And Father John McShane was the first priest who was sent here. And Father John McShane had served in many parishes around the Diocese of Reno, which at that time covered the entire state of Nevada. And Father John was here as our administrator from 1992 in July until July of 1996. So for a full 4 years, Father John McShane was our parish administrator. Father John did many of the things. He established the first societies here in the parish. He established the first parish meetings. He gathered people together. He established the first gathering in a rectory, a home that was rented and later purchased from John and Ann Altamare, and that still exists as our rectory today over on Terrace View Drive. The place for masses we were located in the Gold River Casino. It became Sam's Town a little later on, became the River Palms a little later on after that, and we know it now as the Laughlin River Lodge. But our first masses were celebrated in the Gold River Casino. And the first masses were celebrated on the 16th of August in 1992 at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 10 o'clock in the morning. Those two masses. Bishop Walsh came down from Reno for that opening celebration. People gathered in various rooms at the Gold River Casino. Sometimes the masses were said in the main theater area. Sometimes they were said in public ballrooms. Sometimes they were said in meeting rooms. They was all over the building. But for 4 years, we were there, and Father John McShane celebrated the masses for us. Father John McShane is a huge fan of the San Francisco 49ers, and Father John McShane probably puts more miles on his vehicle in a year than most people put on their vehicles in a decade or more. John drives an awful lot. I became friends with Father John because I was subscribing to the Laughlin paper, and I noticed that a priest was being sent to Laughlin, and I immediately wrote to the priest, Father John McShane, explaining that I was a visitor from New Jersey and I really loved the area, and would I be able to come and visit now that he has been assigned here as the administrator? And John wrote back immediately, and in November of 1992, barely 4 months after we had been established as a parish mission, I was able to visit from New Jersey and celebrate Mass here in Laughlin, again at the Gold River Casino. The daily Masses were said in the dining room and living room of the rectory over on Terrace View, and whenever I would come to visit, I would regard that as kind of interesting. You get to sleep upstairs, come downstairs to the kitchen, walk into the dining room for Mass with the congregation, and then go back into the kitchen for a cup of coffee and some breakfast. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And Father John McShane and I have become good friends, and in the early years, one of the things we did is we would exchange parishes in order to get a vacation. So I would come out here to Laughlin for a week or so, and Father John McShane would come out to New Jersey for the same week or so, and he would get to vacation in New Jersey, New York City, that area, and I would get to vacation in the area of Laughlin and Las Vegas and see my magic shows, and John would get over to New York to see some Broadway shows. It was kind of a nice relationship between us. So Father John McShane was our first administrator. When he left Laughlin, he went up to become pastor at various places in Las Vegas. He was at our Holy Family Parish. He was also sent up to Ely and was pastor in Ely, Nevada for Sacred Heart Parish. He worked with Catholic Charities in Las Vegas, and he established a ministry to the homeless in Las Vegas, as well as to some of the prison population in Las Vegas. He's established a continuing Bible study up at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Las Vegas, and he continues to do that. Currently, Father John is in residence at St. Anne's Parish in Las Vegas, and he continues to put more miles on his car than anybody else I know. I have a couple of pictures here. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see them, but Father John McShane standing by the Welcome to Laughlin sign with an advertisement of our Masses. This was taken probably in late 1992 or early 1993. And a picture of Father John a few years later than that. Our second priest here was Father Kevin McAuliffe. Father Kevin McAuliffe later became Monsignor Kevin McAuliffe, and he was here from August of 1996, immediately following Father McShane, and he only stayed until June of 1997. So he was here for only a period of 11 months. Father Kevin, later becoming Monsignor Kevin, worked out of the tribunal in the Diocese of Las Vegas. He worked very much with the diocese. So his 11 months here were kind of a little bit out of character, but we were very glad to have him. And he eventually went up to Las Vegas, continued his ministry. He eventually became a priest in the Byzantine, the Eastern rites of the Catholic Church, and he is currently serving in that capacity in the area of Phoenix, Arizona. Father Kevin had a lot to do with the beginnings of planning for our church, where it would be located, what it might look like. In the 11 months, there was a lot of pre-planning done for things that later developed. Father Kevin was also considerably taller than I am, so whenever I put a vestment on here and it seems to reach down to the floor, I usually look up and say, that's one of Father Kevin's vestments he bought for us here. He was the tallest of our administrators. Father Kevin was succeeded in July of 1997 by Father Peter Romeo. Father Peter Romeo was here from July of 1997 until July of 1999. He was here for a period of 2 years. One of the things that Father Kevin had done in that short year that he was here, Father Kevin was the one who moved us from the Gold River Casino to the Riverside Casino. That happened in August of 1996, very shortly after he arrived. And so Father Romeo continued the Masses at the Riverside Casino, as well as planning for eventually building a church over here. Father Romeo was also a judge on the diocesan tribunal, so he really commuted a lot of his time back and forth between here and Las Vegas. I had the pleasure of meeting Father Kevin, as well as Father McShane and Father Romeo, in coming out here on vacations. And one of the things I remember about Father Peter Romeo is he began to raise funds for ultimately building a church. And one of the things he did to raise funds, and some of the older parishioners might remember this, is Father Romeo sold little glass goldfish. And they would float. They would have a little glass vial or a ball with it, and you would put it into water, and the fish would be on a little string, a little bit of fishing line, and the goldfish would move around. I believe he sold them for $3 each to raise money for the building of the church. So that's our first 3 out of the 6 administrators, Father John McShane, Father Kevin McAuliffe, and Father Peter Romeo. Father Romeo eventually became pastor of Our Lady of Las Vegas, and he died a few years ago. Father Romeo is the only one of our administrators to die. The other 5 of us are still alive, and you'll hear more about the other administrators next week. It's about time for us to have a visit from our owl, and he does come down. I should mention, by the way, that the real Paschal has not been hanging around as much, but one of our parishioners this week said he was out walking his dog at 3:30 in the morning, and there was Paschal sitting on the roof of the church, still watching over us. So he's probably changed his location of where he likes to perch a bit, and I'm not going to get up at 3:30 in the morning to go visit with him myself, but he is still around, and we look forward to him staying a long, long time in our area. Let's see what our little friend has in his beak for us today. It's a simple Latin expression, Sume et Suscipe. Sume et Suscipe. The reason I selected that, it's the title of a very famous prayer, the Sume et Suscipe, sometimes just called the Suscipe. This week, the last week of July, we celebrate some very famous saints in our Catholic Church. We celebrate the feast of St. James with that wonderful long walk that people take for 500 miles in Spain in honor of St. James. We celebrate the feast of St. Martha, one of the women who entertained Jesus by taking care of his physical needs of food and beverage and a place to stay, her and her sister Mary and her brother Lazarus. We celebrate on Friday of this week St. Ignatius of Loyola, who died in 1556, was born in the late 1400s, and he became the founder of a very famous religious order, the Jesuits, of which our current Holy Father, Pope Francis, is a member. And St. Ignatius of Loyola had been a soldier, and he went from being a soldier to being a religious priest. But he organized the Jesuits kind of around a military theme, so that they were very organized as a force for the Lord and for Catholicism, not only in Europe, but also in the New World of the Americas, and indeed around the world. He wrote many, many prayers, and among the prayers that he's written, one of my favorites has been this Sume et Suscipe, sometimes simply called the Suscipe. And it was a prayer that he wrote to be said within the Jesuit religious order, but it's certainly been adopted by people around the world. And I share it with you today. The Sume et Suscipe means take and receive. That's how it translates into English. Take and receive. And the whole prayer goes, take and receive, O Lord, all my liberty. Take my memory, my understanding, and my entire will. Whatsoever I have or possess, you have given to me, and I return it to you all right now. Take it back, and I surrender it wholly to be governed by your will. Give me only thee alone with thy grace, and I am rich enough, and I ask for nothing more. The Suscipe has been long a favorite prayer among the Jesuits, but among other people as a morning prayer. Lord, take all that I have, all my thoughts, all my memory, all my understanding, all my will. You gave it to me, and I give it back to you to be governed by you. Let me think what you want me to think. Let me say what you want me to say. Let me do what you want me to do. We honor St. Ignatius with the prayer, the Suscipe or Sume et Suscipe today. Have a wonderful week. We have completed our 13th show. God bless.